Welcome to this episode of Paddle and Flow. This is a special episode where we're going to talk a little bit about a flare demo that I went to with Lothian Sea Kayak Club. I'm here with Nicola, as always.
Hi, Alex.
And I went to a flare demo recently, and we're going to talk just a little bit about that, I think. We will put this episode up on Spotify and on YouTube, although it's a very visual episode. So apologies now if you're listening on Spotify. You may want to jump over to YouTube at Paddle and Flow to see what you can see.
Can you tell us what this day, what was it about? What was the purpose? What was its purpose?
Yeah, so it was arranged by Lothian Sea Kayak Club and their water safety team. It was a really interesting day. I got invited by Russell Henderson, who we're going to have on the podcast soon. I hope, Russell, I know you listen to the podcast and we will get you on, and Felipe as well, two other people that we need to get on. I just haven't managed yet.
Okay.
So yeah, Russell Henderson invited me down to this flare demo that Lothian Sea Kayak were running to get a little bit of audio and video for the podcast, but also for them, I'm going to send a little cut up of the clips to them so that they've got a little like infographic kind of 1-minute video for their social media feeds. It was purely about flare demonstration, about how a flare works. So, and to give a couple of the members a hands-on or nearly hands-on experience of sort of firing a flare, because when you get into the heat of the moment and you have to set a flare off, it can be quite daunting.
Yes, I made the conscious decision not to buy Pyrotechnic flares to carry in my boat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that was one of the conversations that came up on the day was,
Right.
you know, how do you stop it melting your boat, basically?
Or your hand.
Or your hand. And they do recommend to carry a glove.
Do they?
Yeah, and
Right.
you and I just looked at the RNLI's guidance on water sea kayaking in Britain, and they do say two different articles that I read on their website. One didn't specifically mention flares at all, so no positive or negative, and the other one was written by Nigel Dennis, and Nigel had written, you know, it's good to carry 2-day and 1-night flare in your PFD or your grab bag.
Right. I was going to ask what the RNLI recommendation was, so that's good to know.
That's what we found.
Yeah.
In that brief moment where you and I were preparing for this.
Yeah. So I guess there is the option of electronic flare, but so this was purely pyrotechnic flares.
Yeah, and you can't test an electronic flare in that kind of environment because it's a red flare, which is an immediate distress flare. When they test flares, they always test with white, never with red.
Right.
Because red is, I suppose it's the big one, it's the real one.
Mm-hmm.
When that red flare goes off, you want a response, and I suppose that's just kind of keep it between that. But no, it was good. There were 3 parachute flare tested, a handheld flare, 2 handheld flares, and yeah, it was just nice to have that kind of demonstration. You know, obviously flares seek the wind, so you want to fire them in the right direction to make sure that they go up and not out.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose if that makes sense. And also they are quite violent when they go off. So I suppose it was just to give people that were there. It was well attended, actually. There was about 20 folk
Right.
there, including a couple of instructors, just to give them an idea. You know, when it goes off, it is loud and it is noisy and it is smoky.
And was this their first experience?
A lot of them, not all of them, but
Right.
a lot of them, yeah.
Successful?
I think so. I think everyone enjoyed it. Helpful. Certainly, you know, we'll put in the clips that I got at the end of this, but some, you know, the guy that was doing the talking, I can't remember anyone's name, very knowledgeable. And then there was Mr. Simpson, Dave, is that his name? I can't remember what his first name is. I really can't remember what his first name is, but Simpson is his surname. You're looking confused.
I am. No, yeah. It doesn't.
Anyway, very knowledgeable, the guys that
Right.
were doing it. It was very interesting. And yeah, I think all in all, people found it a good day.
Very good.
Key takeaways:
Yes.
wear a glove.
Yes.
you can.
Yeah, I have seen images of hand injuries from that was what basically influenced my decision not to buy them.
And you also got an electronic flare, which we've talked about in the past.
Yeah. So wear a glove.
Wear a glove. Make sure they're accessible. I think that's something that can be very easy to forget. You know, the flares go in at the bottom of the hatch, not the top of the hatch, or you know, underneath the sandwiches, or you
Make
know,
sure you
not
can reach them.
actually somewhere you can get them. So I think that's another big one. And they are violent, you know, and just being prepared for that.
So what colour and when would you use a parachute flare?
So
what are the different flares?
So distress flares are red.
Right.
And then you've got parachute flares, which are red distress parachute flares. They fire up to a height of quite high in the sky. Can't remember what the height is off the top of my head. And they burn for 40-ish seconds to give people a really clear view of them. The way they work is they fire a projectile out and then it puffs open a little parachute, and that parachute kind of catches the wind, and the parachute holds it in the wind, and it just kind of filters down to the ground quite nicely. You've got handheld flares. So there's two different types of handheld flare, both for an emergency. One is orange smoke, which is obviously for use in the day when someone can see you. Mm-hmm. One of the guys on the lifeboat in Dunbar does talk about searching for someone because they could smell the smoke. Oh. So it was fog. Mm-hmm. They'd obviously set the smoke flare off because they were struggling, and the rescuers could smell the fog, so actually just followed their noses to find this casualty. Smoke will also get picked up on a thermal imaging camera, so there is something to be said about that. Okay. And the other type is sort of your standard red flare that you see set off at football games. The big smoky red, mm-hmm. Gunk flying everywhere. Your classic red flare. They burn pretty hot when you're holding them, so got to make sure you submerge them in water before you go touching the hot end. And that's, I suppose, where you can melt your boat and melt your hand, depending on which way you're pointing them. So they were kind of the two types that they demonstrated. So the ones that we should carry are red, but the ones they demonstrated were white flares. That the RNLI use white flares to sort of light up an area if they need to illuminate. You see it on Saving Lives at Sea all the time. We're going to put up a white flare, not to be used when the helicopter's nearby, but otherwise good to see, so you can get a view on what's going on.
No lesson for me, thank you.
No worries. We'll put those clips in. And thank you very much for watching this episode of Paddle and Flow. If you have enjoyed this episode, as always,
like and subscribe. Leave us a comment, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks, bye.
Happy paddling. Are you supposed to say happy paddling?
Yeah.
Happy paddling.
Happy paddling.
I think it's too cheesy for me. I can't do it.
The place of pyrotechnics in general safety equipment is a place. They are not the means of summoning assistance. And I would make the case, and will do in the next 2 minutes, that there is no one way that is best of summoning assistance. You're better to have a range of equipment, and that increases the chances that you are going to actually get through to somebody. And the advice I was given from somebody that knew a lot about deploying stuff under real pressure in combat zones is, don't try and make up your mind what to do when you have to do it. So you need to have in your own head the sequence of what you're going to do if you've decided that you're in a Mayday situation. So reminding ourselves, Mayday is fear of imminent death. So as a trip leader or an individual, I've made the assessment that we need help and we need it urgently now. At that point, I would activate my PLB, and I would do that first, because once the button is pressed, then it's looking after itself, providing the aerial is vertical. And that's why on the deck of my kayaks, I have a piece of industrial Velcro on the back of that, so that I can put it on the deck. Because most of the PLB deployments for real have been on the shore, on rocks or on beaches, after a situation has been gotten under control, but people need to be extracted. If I was in the water, they've got lanyards to clip, etc., and that's a different situation. I would have to be holding it, obviously, and it's attached to my buoyancy where it lives. But the PLB goes first. There's then a bit of a debate in my mind, but I have a settled opinion on it. Do I release a parachute flare or do I VHF the Coast Guard? VHF is quite patchy. You may know that you're in an area where it always works, but on a trip you may not. And you could waste a minute or two trying to get through and having no response. You might be lucky and a passing yacht or something might relay your message. But if you imagine, and if you turn around and look at, which is a dot on the horizon, and it's an orange it's a lifeboat or a helicopter, you want something that is going to be really bright. Now, I know all the stuff about you can keep broadcasting on your radio and they'll always say that they have great difficulty in seeing the kayaker, even if they're in their kayak. Remember, they've got visors on. If they're in an inshore boat, they've got helmets, there's spray, there's noise. You want to be able to see, to be seen where you are. Again, not good to have a binary choice. David's going to go through the handheld flares just now, but the difference between this and a handheld, one isn't better than the other. They're different. This will run for hours. A handheld will run for a minute or so. I'm going to pass over to David, having made the point. Have the sequence in your head. Practice it with your pals in a scenario often, and then when you need to do it, you know what you're doing and you're not worried about missing something out.
Right, be very brief. Handheld flare. They usually have a plastic handle. Sometimes it's a plastic tube. These ones are metal tubes, which means that they will get hot. It's a magnesium. I think it's still magnesium. My wife's a chemist. Magnesium thing, which means that if it's going and you put it in the water and you bring it back out again, it will go back again, right? So if you really need to get rid of it, throw it well away. Right? Okay. I'll maybe now to activate these particular ones. These are the ones that we've ordered in the club. There is a flip top, and then there's a ring, and that is your. This stuff won't go off unless you pull it.
Buddy,
and you've got to be pretty proactive. Remember, with cold hands and all the rest of it. I mean, I've got gauntlets here. You know, some people do carry gauntlets in the buoyancies. I'm going to do that because we're all standing around here, and I'm going to move off. Rory, do you want to come over, pop on these things? For sure. In fact, why don't we just let you? I'll do one, and then you do the other, and then we'll. So when you fire it off, that plug will come out as well, right? And some of the problems with these things is when they get corroded, they jam, and then it can fire backwards. So that's why it's a good idea to have it at an angle, not pointed towards you, down, so that you know, if anything does go wrong. It's very unlikely.
Yeah, just thought about it.
Thousands of football fans are not injured by these things, but it's worth doing. And sometimes nothing happens, in which case jettison it. That's a hell of a lot closer to you. So when you put it down, oh thank goodness I've set it off, you put it on your deck. And it's really quite important, that plastic tube is where you hold it. Okay, I hope you find that useful. Now Rory, you won't get to see much. If you've ever swum in the sea, you know, in breaking waves for a while, faced up to 5 minutes of line.
Yeah. Different types. Some have a lanyard that you pull in the same way that was pulled for the handheld white. I don't like those because when you pull it, you're only holding this with one hand, yeah? And it tends to do this, because this has a big recoil. Whereas when you compress it, you're compressing it and it gives you that stability. I'm going to wear a glove for setting it off. I would prefer not to be honest, because I find it easier to handle them. And I'm going to show you that's the trigger, and it comes up and round, and you compress it against the tube. Now, ordinarily, I would fire it slightly into the wind so it comes back over us. But in deference to the buildings, etc., I'm going to fire it more angled out to sea. Okay? Right? If you don't do this. Yep.
When you say you had to press that trigger,
Yeah.
I mean, how stiff is it?
It's not that stiff. Do you want to do the second one?
No.
It's up to you.
I got such a bloody fright when
I'll stand beside you if you wish. Would you like to?
Hey.
I have them in two. I have them compartmentalized. So I have two red parachute flares. And I have a pack of a red handheld, a white handheld, which is collision, and a red orange smoke. Smoke's really good because it makes a huge patch, but it's also very good on the land for signaling an incoming helicopter. And you would want to clear the beach area or the area you're in of any debris, because they'll turn into missiles with the downdraft. You'll also notice that I've got a glove attached to it. So when using handheld, I would put the glove on, put the glove in the water, just to give myself some additional protection, because it's really important that you don't touch that tube. So that's how I carry them. So they're not in my buoyancy aid, they're in my day hat. But I would hope that if you ever opened my day hat, the first thing you would see is that. You wouldn't see my packed lunch, you wouldn't see my first aid kit, you wouldn't see anything else, because they'd all be under that. And a really great way of demoing that, and I've seen it done on a few 5-star assessments, is the assessor says, okay, everybody get in the water, now take out 3 means of summoning assistance from your boat while you're in the water. And what they don't want to see is people rummaging about and all sorts of kit coming out. So that comes out first. Things out. You can pass it round. It's quite heavy. That's